Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide, the deep dive into the case of Robert Pickton.
Hi. Yeah, today we're opening the sources on a case that is, well, it's incredibly difficult, frankly, gut-wrenching, but it's absolutely essential for understanding the catastrophic impact of systemic failure. We're analyzing Robert William Pickton, the pig farmer killer.
Also known as the Butcher.
Yeah.
We're drawing on a whole stack of research reports.
Yeah.
It's extensive.
It really is. And our mission here isn't just to, recount a gruesome story.
No.
We need to unpack the entire horrific narrative. How did this happen? How was he allowed to operate for so long?
We have to look at his background, that bizarre upbringing, and then, critically, the years and years of police. Well, indifference, really. Judicial indifference, too.
And then the investigation itself, massive, unprecedented forensic work. And the aftermath, the painful reckoning.
It's a story defined by profound institutional neglect. I mean, the numbers alone are chilling.
They are. Convicted of 6 murders, charged with 21 others.
But then there's that alleged confession to an undercover officer.
Right. That he'd murdered 49 women. 49.
Mostly vulnerable women, sex workers from Vancouver's downtown east side. It's staggering.
And this is why, this isn't just a true crime deep dive. It's an examination of how society, how our legal systems, through prejudice, through neglect, effectively treated a whole group of people as disposable.
Yeah.
That awful concept of the less dead.
It's central to this whole case.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. The butcher's domain. The pig farm.
Okay. To really get a handle on Pickton, you have to start there. At the farm itself, Robert William Pickton, born October 24th, 1949,
Right.
grew up on this sprawling, very isolated property, Port Coquitlam, British Columbia.
Which sounds far away, but it's actually only, 27 kilometers east of Vancouver?
Exactly. Geographically close, but culturally a completely different world. A world of dysfunction, isolation.
And the sources we have paint a picture of a really neglectful, frankly strange upbringing.
Extremely. He and his younger brother, David, they were raised largely by their mother, Louise, and she was demanding.
Demanding. And seemingly more focused on the pigs, the livestock, than her own sons.
That's the picture painted, yes.
Yeah.
Pickton worked incredibly long hours on that farm from a young age.
Constantly surrounded by, the smell. Manure, grime.
Which followed him to school. The sources mention he'd often arrive dirty, reeking.
Leading to that horrible nickname his classmates gave him, Stinky Piggy.
Awful, and just reinforces that sense of isolation.
Which was compounded by his struggles in school, too. He failed grade 2.
Yes, failed grade 2, ended up in special education, eventually dropped out altogether around age 14, maybe 1963.
He did try leaving the farm briefly, right? Worked as a meat cutter.
For about 7 years, yeah. Gained skills with knives, butchering tools, skills that become chillingly relevant later.
But ultimately, he went back to the farm.
Back to that environment. And there's one story from his childhood, an anecdote that really stands out.
The calf.
The calf. When he was 12, he apparently got very attached to this pet calf, kept it for just 2 weeks. Then his parents, apparently without warning, slaughtered it.
And he found it. Butchered.
That's the report. Deeply distressing for him. It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. In an environment with little human connection, to have this bond violently severed and normalized by the setting.
Yeah, it suggests a certain detachment, a coldness towards life and death, perhaps being ingrained early on.
And after his parents died, he and his brother inherited the land. Sold off huge chunks of it, too.
Made millions, actually. Over $5 million in the late 70s from land sales. But they kept the core property.
The property where the horrors would eventually take place.
And that property,
Wow.
well, it offered the first huge, undeniable warning sign about Robert Pickton, a sign the justice system tragically missed.
You're talking about the 1997 incident.
Yeah.
The attempted murder charge.
Exactly. Wendy Lynn Eistetter, March 23, 1997.
Let's break this down because it's so crucial. Pickton brought Eistetter, a sex worker, back to the farm.
Right, an altercation happened. He handcuffed her, stabbed her multiple times.
4 times, the reports say. But she fought back. Incredibly, she fought back.
She did. Managed to get out of the handcuffs, grab the weapon from him, and stab him with it.
Then she ran for help. A true survivor. She gave compelling testimony.
Absolutely. She identified him. Pickton himself needed medical treatment for the wound she inflicted. The evidence seems strong.
Attempted murder, assault, forcible confinement charges were laid.
Yet January 1998, the Crown stayed all charges. Just dropped them.
And the reason?
Yeah.
This is where that less dead concept just slams you in the face.
It really is. The prosecution felt Eistetter, because she struggled with drug addiction, was too unstable.
Too unstable. They thought her testimony wouldn't hold up in court, that she wouldn't be seen as credible enough to convict him.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Her vulnerability, her marginalization, wasn't seen as a reason to protect her more fiercely, but as a reason to dismiss her case. A legal calculation.
A catastrophic one. If they'd pursued that case, Pickton would have been stopped right there in 1998.
Years before the disappearances escalated. So many lives potentially saved.
It's chilling. And while the justice system is failing Eistetter, what's Pickton doing? He's using that same property for parties.
Oh, yeah. Piggy's Palace. The farm became this bizarre mix of hidden horror and very public hedonism.
An ad hoc nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
Inside a converted slaughterhouse on the farm. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
And this wasn't 6 small gatherings. Sources say these parties could attract up to 2,000 people. Massive, chaotic events.
And who's going?
Wow.
Not just locals. We're talking prominent figures.
Business people, political figures reportedly attended alongside members of the Hells Angels. A real cross-section.
And that chaos, that sheer volume of people coming and going.
Yeah.
It provided the perfect cover, didn't it?
Absolutely. Who would notice a few missing, vulnerable women disappearing from the edges of that scene?
The brothers ran into legal trouble over Piggy's Palace, too, with zoning violations.
They did. Sued by Port Coquitlam officials repeatedly. They even tried to legitimize it in this really strange way.
The charity.
The charity. The Piggy Palace Good Time Society, registered in 1996, claimed they were raising money for worthy groups.
Right. But they ignored injunctions banning the parties, didn't file financial statements.
And the charity status was revoked pretty quickly the next year.
But the key point is, for years, this place, this site of unimaginable violence, was also operating as this widely known, highly visible, legally contested party spot. The dissonance is just, wow.
It really is. And while all this is happening at the farm, 27 kilometers away, in Vancouver's downtown east side, a different kind of crisis is deepening.
The DTES. You can't understand Pickton's victims without understanding this environment.
No, it's absolutely essential context. We're talking about one of Canada's most impoverished urban neighborhoods.
Extreme poverty, very high rates of severe addiction heroin, crack cocaine, particularly widespread homelessness.
And a large population of survival sex workers just trying to get by day to day.
Crucially, a population that was, and still is, disproportionately Indigenous women.
Yes. And that intersection, poverty, addiction, race, being involved in sex work, created a community viewed with profound prejudice by many, including, it seems, the authorities.
People whose disappearances, systemically, were just not treated with urgency.
And they were disappearing, starting faintly in the early 90s, but then accelerating dramatically from 1995 onwards.
Women of all ages, late teens up to their 50s, many known to police, known to outreach workers, just vanishing.
And this wasn't happening in secret? The community knew something was terribly wrong?
Sex workers themselves, families, advocacy groups, they were raising alarms for years before any serious official action was taken.
They saw the pattern. They suspected a serial predator was active. The media started speculating too.
But the official response, shockingly muted, indifferent almost.
And it wasn't just a lack of action, it was ignoring specific leads that pointed directly at Pickton.
Like the employee who found purses belonging to missing women from the DPEs right there on the farm.
Yeah.
Reported it.
Police searched 3 times, found nothing they deemed significant enough to pursue harder. It's baffling.
And then the most damning ignored tip of all. June 1999.
Unbelievable. A specific anonymous tip warning police that Pickton had a freezer full of human flesh, stored in his farmhouse.
A freezer full of human flesh, that's specific. And it was ignored, not pursued.
Not pursued, just filed away, apparently. Think about that timeline.
The dropped attempted murder charge in 98, the ignored freezer tip in 99.
These aren't just procedural errors, they're symptoms. Symptoms of a systemic bias that made these women's lives and the warnings about their killer seem unimportant, meaningless to the people meant to protect them.
Which brings us squarely to the systemic failure, the institutional accountability, or lack thereof.
This case is arguably the definitive Canadian example of catastrophic failure rooted in that kind of systemic neglect.
Bias, racism, sexism, prejudice against sex workers, against addicts. It created this official mindset, didn't it?
It absolutely did. The initial police response, or non-response, was often to suggest the women had simply moved on.
Changed their lifestyle. decide to go somewhere else. As if dozens of women would simultaneously just drift away without a word.
It shows a fundamental lack of understanding, or maybe a willful ignorance of their lives and vulnerabilities.
And that mindset directly crippled the police work. You had jurisdictional chaos compounding the problem.
A huge factor. The Vancouver Police Department, the VCD, handled missing persons in the DTES itself.
But the farm, Pickton's territory, was under the jurisdiction of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP.
And these two forces, well, they didn't play well together, failed to coordinate effectively. Reports of turf wars, bureaucratic fighting over resources, or who's in charge.
Even when Pickton was becoming a clear person of interest.
Even then, these internal squabbles, the difficulty getting joint search warrants approved and executed, it meant critical time, years, were lost.
And we know there were specific recommendations for addressing this, right, that were ignored.
Yes. Back in 1997, a Vancouver detective, Wayne Lang, strongly urged them to create a dedicated joint task force for the missing women.
A sensible idea given the pattern. What happened?
It was shelved. Didn't happen. Then, the Missing Persons Review they finally started in 1999. Notoriously under-resourced, understaffed.
It sent a clear message, didn't it? That protecting this group wasn't a high priority.
It certainly seems that way in retrospect. They were always playing catch-up, chasing shadows, while the killer was practically operating in plain sight, protected by this wall of indifference and jurisdictional mess.
And we have to keep coming back to that 1997 attempted murder case.
Oh.
The decision to stay those charges against Pickton.
We do, because the impact was devastating. Analyze that decision again. Why drop such serious charges?
It boils down to the perceived credibility of the victim, Wendy Eistetter.
Right. The Crown needs to believe there's a reasonable likelihood of conviction. That's the standard.
And because Eistetter struggled with addiction, they feared the defense would easily tear her testimony apart, paint her as unreliable.
Exactly. It's a common defense tactic, and it disproportionately impacts marginalized witnesses. Their lifestyle is put on trial alongside the alleged perpetrator.
So the system prioritized perceived legal certainty, the odds of winning the case over public safety, over stopping a clearly violent man.
That's certainly how it looks. By making that calculation, the justice system effectively gave Pickton a green light. They failed to stop him when they had the chance.
And the human cost. Think about it. If they'd prosecuted in 97, 98, Pickton would likely have been convicted, incarcerated.
Marnie Lee Ann Frey, one of the 6 women he was eventually convicted of killing, she went missing late in 1997 after the attack on Eistetter.
So she, and likely dozens of others whose disappearances came later, they could have been saved.
It's an almost unbearable thought. That institutional mindset, the jurisdictional friction, dismissing key evidence like the Eistetter case, the freezer tip, it all created this perfect storm.
A protective shell around Pickton, allowing his killing spree to continue, even accelerate, for another 5 years, until 2002.
And the breakthrough, when it finally came, was almost accidental. It wasn't even initially about the missing women.
Which is incredible. February 6th, 2002. Police execute a search warrant on the farm. But why?
Illegal firearms. That was the reason for the initial warrant.
So they go in looking for guns.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they find?
They immediately find items. Personal belongings, ID, clothing, things that clearly belong to some of the missing women from the DTES.
The connection was finally made, right there on the property.
That discovery instantly triggered a second, much broader warrant. This one specifically for the BC missing women investigation. The dam had broken.
Pickton was arrested just over 2 weeks later, February 22, 2002, initially for 2 murders.
Yes, first charged with the first-degree murders of Serena Abbotsway and Mona Wilson.
But as investigators began the enormous task of searching that farm, the scope of the horror became clearer.
And the charges just kept piling up. By May 2005, he was facing 27 counts of first-degree murder, nearly 24 victims named.
And the farm itself. It became the site of one of the biggest, most complex forensic investigations ever in Canada.
Immense. The cost alone sees $70 million by the end of 2003. The excavation work went on for months, through November 2003.
And you have to picture this scene. An active pig farm. Not just a burial site, but a place of active, chaotic disposal.
Exactly. Bodies weren't neatly buried. They were dismembered, decomposed, potentially eaten by insects, by the pigs. It was a forensic nightmare.
So how did they even approach searching it?
They had to bring in heavy equipment, massive conveyor belts, like 50 feet long, sophisticated soil sifters.
Sifting through tons and tons of earth.
An unbelievable amount, 383,000 cubic meters of soil. Think about that volume. enough to fill dozens of Olympic pools.
Just sifting through mud, garbage, farm waste, biological material, looking for tiny fragments, bone, teeth, tissue.
Painstaking, slow, gruesome work. And because of the decomposition and disposal methods for many victims, the only link would be minute traces of DNA.
Which brings us back to those horrifying disposal methods. The claims that emerged later that just sickened the public.
Yeah, there were two main ones that caused widespread shock and revulsion. The first came out around 2004.
The allegation that he might have ground up human remains and mixed it with pork. Pork that he sold.
Yes, which led to an urgent public health warning. Imagine the panic.
Was there ever proof that contaminated pork actually reached consumers?
No specific evidence confirmed it got into the public market, thankfully. But the fear, the possibility, that was incredibly damaging.
And the second claim, equally horrific.
That he fed the bodies directly to his pigs, using the farm animals themselves as a disposal system.
A way to destroy evidence, make the bodies vanish almost completely?
It's beyond disturbing. But despite all that contamination, the forensic teams did find crucial links.
Like the DNA found on his clothes from the 1997 attack.
Exactly. In 2004, testing found DNA from two missing women, Andrea Borhaven and Kara Ellis, on the rubber boots and clothes Pickton wore when he attacked Wendy Eistetter.
Connecting him directly to other victims at the time of that first known violent attack.
A critical piece of evidence. And ultimately, despite the challenges, remains, or DNA, from 33 different women were found on that property, confirming the horrifying scale.
So the evidence is mounting. The trial finally begins January 2006. Pickton pleads not guilty to all 27 counts. How did the court even handle that?
It was a huge challenge. The solution they landed on was controversial. Severance.
Splitting the charges.
Yes. Justice James Williams ruled in August 2006 to split them. Try Pickton initially on just 6 counts of first-degree murder.
And leave the other 20 charges for later. Potentially a second trial.
That was the idea. The reasoning was pragmatic, if debated.
What was the logic? Why not try all 26 together, since one charge was dropped before trial started?
The concern was the sheer length. Trying all 26 could take over 2 years. That was seen as an unreasonable burden on a jury.
Risk of jurors dropping out, memories fading, risk of a mistrial after all that time and effort.
Precisely. They felt severing the charges gave a better chance of securing some convictions, rather than risking losing everything in one massive, unwieldy trial.
A compromise, then. So the first trial focused on 6 women, and when the publication ban eventually lifted, the details that came out were staggering.
The biggest bombshell, obviously, was Pickton's own words, the confession.
To the undercover RCMP officer in his cell, the one he thought was just another inmate.
That's the one. He boasted, said he'd killed 49 women. 49.
And infamously said he was going for 50, right?
Yeah.
Aiming for an even number before he got caught.
Chillingly, yes. That confession confirmed the community's worst fears. The death toll was far, far higher than even the 27 charges suggested.
And the physical evidence found in his trailer? It painted a picture of a predator.
Oh, absolutely. A loaded .22 revolver with that bizarre modification.
The dildo taped over the barrel, which he claimed was a silencer.
A makeshift, probably useless silencer, yeah. But also night vision goggles, handcuffs, magnum ammunition, Spanish fly aphrodisiac.
These aren't random items. They suggest planning, preparation, tools of his trade.
Exactly. It counters any defense narrative of things just getting out of hand impulsively. This looked calculated.
And then you had testimony from his associates, people who knew him.
Videotape testimony. Scott Chubb, Andrew Bellwood, describing conversations they allegedly had with Pickton.
What did they claim he said?
Chubb said Pickton talked about killing heroin addicts with injections of windshield washer fluid. Bellwood described Pickton detailing how he'd handcuff, strangle, bleed, and gut sex workers
before feeding them to the pigs.
That was Bellwood's claim. And some physical evidence seemed to support parts of it. Mona Wilson's remains were found in a garbage can inside the slaughterhouse building.
There was also that mention of unidentified DNA profiles found.
Yeah, around 80 unidentified profiles, half male, half female, found on various pieces of evidence, suggesting a lot of people, a lot of activity, perhaps other crimes. Mysteries within mysteries.
So with all this evidence, the confession, the physical items, the witness accounts, the DNA, the verdict came down December 9, 2007, and it was complex.
It was. The jury found Pickton not guilty of the 6 counts of first-degree murder.
Not guilty of first degree.
But guilty on 6 counts of the lesser charge. second-degree murder.
Okay, so what's the significance there? They believe he killed them.
Yes, they clearly believed he was responsible for their deaths, but they weren't convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the killings were planned and deliberate beforehand. That's the key element for first degree.
So guilty of murder, but not premeditated murder in the eyes of the jury for those specific 6 cases.
Correct. He received the maximum possible sentence for second-degree murder in Canada.
Which is life imprisonment with no chance of parole for how long?
25 years. Justice Williams called the crimes senseless and despicable during sentencing.
And we should name those 6 women again, the women whose murders he was convicted of.
Yes. Serena Abbotsway, Mona Lee Wilson, Andrea Josbury, Brenda Ann Wolfe, Georgina Faith Papin, and Marnie Lee Ann Frey. Their cases put him away.
But that left the other 21 charges hanging. Women like Jacqueline McDonald, Tanya Holnick, Sarah DeVries, Kara Ellis. What happened with their cases?
Those remaining 21 charges were formally stayed by the Crown in August 2010.
Stayed, meaning essentially dropped, not pursued further.
Correct. The reasoning given by the Crown was, again, largely pragmatic. Pickton was already serving the absolute maximum sentence possible under Canadian law life, 25 years, no parole.
So even if they convicted him on all 21 other murders, his sentence couldn't actually be increased.
Exactly. He couldn't serve any more time. So the Crown argued that putting the families, the witnesses, the justice system through another incredibly long, expensive, and traumatic trial was unnecessary.
Legally, maybe makes sense. But for the families of those 21 women, no conviction, no official finding of guilt for their loved one's death. That must have been incredibly hard.
Undeniably. It left a sense of incomplete justice, of accountability denied for many of the victims, a painful compromise.
And the legal wrangling wasn't even over then, was it? There were appeals.
Oh, yes. Pickton's defense immediately appealed, seeking a new trial. And the Crown played defense in a way.
How so?
They strategically also appealing the acquittals on the first-degree murder charges.
Why would they do that if he was already convicted of second degree?
It was insurance. If the defense appeal succeeded and a new trial was ordered, the Crown wanted the option of trying him for first degree again. They had to file their appeal proactively.
Which apparently caused some friction, with victims' families feeling blindsided by the Attorney General at the time, Wally Opal.
There were reports of that, yes. Communication issues around the timing. But the appeals process churned on. BC Court of Appeal dismissed the defense appeal.
And it went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada.
It did. Finally, in July 2010, the Supreme Court shut it down, unanimously affirmed the 6 second-degree murder convictions. That was the end of the road, legally.
But even in that final ruling, there was some disagreement among the justices. A split.
There was. A 6-3 split in the detailed legal reasoning, though not on the outcome. It concerned the judge's instructions to the jury.
Specifically about liability if Pickton wasn't the only person involved. If he maybe had help.
Exactly. Justices Sharon and LaBelle wrote dissenting opinions about whether the jury was properly instructed on finding Pickton guilty if he assisted in the murders, even if he didn't personally commit every single act.
Which subtly raises that lingering question.
Yeah.
Did he have accomplices? Especially with the disposal.
It's a question that has never been fully answered, though the convictions stood firm against Pickton himself.
So Supreme Court confirms the verdict, the appeals are done, and now the publication bans are lifted. August 2010.
And the public finally learns the full, horrific details. The confession to 49 murders, the grinder, the pigs, the sheer scale.
The reaction must have been overwhelming. Shock, horror, and anger.
Profound anger. Directed squarely at the institutions that failed. The police, the justice system. The feeling was widespread. This failure smacked hard of racism, sexism, and bias.
The damage to the police image was immense, leading to a very public apology.
Yes. Deputy Chief Constable Doug Leppard of the Vancouver Police, he gave a formal apology directly to the victims' families. An admission of failure. Deep regret.
His words were powerful. I wish from the bottom of my heart that we would have caught him sooner. I wish that all the mistakes that were made we could undo. And I wish that more lives would have been saved.
It was a necessary, if incredibly painful and overdue, acknowledgement that they had fundamentally failed to protect the most vulnerable.
And that public anger, that admission, it directly led to formal action, didn't it, the inquiry?
The Missing Women Commission of Inquiry, chaired by Wally Opal, who had been the Attorney General, ran from 2010 to 2012.
Its purpose was explicit. Examine the police conduct, identify the systemic failures that allowed Pickton to operate for so long.
And the legacy of that BC inquiry went further. It was a major catalyst, a precursor, for the later, much broader national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the MMIWG inquiry.
So the Pickton case became this horrific, high-profile symbol of a much larger national crisis.
Absolutely. It's shown a brutal spotlight on the dangers faced specifically by Indigenous women in Canada.
Beyond the official inquiries, the case seeped into popular culture too. Films, TV shows.
Yeah, Unclaimed, On the Farm,
Oh,
fictionalized storylines in shows like Criminal Minds, Da Vinci's Inquest, even Dexter.
but that kind of exposure often walked a fine line, didn't it? Sometimes crossing into exploitation.
Definitely. There was controversy over Pamela Masick's art exhibition, The Forgotten, featuring portraits of the victims. The Museum of Anthropology declined to host it over those concerns.
And then there were the more blatant attempts to profit from the notoriety.
Like that supposed autobiography in 2016 Pickton, in his own words, smuggled out of prison somehow, briefly sold online before being pulled amidst outrage.
And even as recently as 2024, that incident with the comedy troupe, Danger Cats.
Selling those unbelievably tasteless T-shirts, Pickton Farms, over 50 flavors of hookery smoked bacon, just vile, caused huge backlash.
It shows how the tragedy continues to cast this long, dark shadow and how easily it can be trivialized or exploited.
It really does. So Pickton serves his sentence, appeals exhausted. Where did he end up?
He was moved through the federal system. By 2018, he was in the maximum security Port Cartier institution in Quebec, a long way from BC.
And he actually became eligible to apply for parole, didn't he?
Yes, February 2024 marked 25 years since his arrest, making him eligible for day parole applications, though no hearing was ever scheduled.
But he wouldn't live long after that date.
No. May 19, 2024, he was attacked inside Port Cartier, viciously attacked by another inmate.
Martin Charest. Known history of assaulting other prisoners. What happened?
Reports say Charest used a broken broomstick handle, shoved it into Pickton's face, head area, and caused massive injuries.
He was put on life support.
But died from complications on May 31st, 2024. He was 74 years old. His end came not from the state, but from another prisoner,
And Charest was charged
with first-degree murder in July 2025. But he pleaded guilty, and apparently stated he did it for Pickton's victims.
A grim, violent end. But his death, while maybe bringing closure for some, it also meant so many questions died with him.
And that's the ultimate lingering tragedy here, the truth that was lost forever.
What are the biggest unresolved issues that Pickton took to his grave?
First, the true number of victims. He confessed to 49. DNA linked him to 33. Charged with 27. Convicted of 6, the real number, likely higher than 49. So any families left without answers.
Second, the precise details. How did he operate? How did he dispose of so many bodies over so long? Did he really act entirely alone?
That Supreme Court discussion about accomplice liability hangs in the air, especially with the sheer scale of the disposal effort required. Did someone help him? But you likely never know for sure.
Third, the women implicated but never charged. Marianne Clark, Stephanie Lane, Dawn Cray, Yvonne Bone. Their cases remain in limbo without official legal closure.
And finally, that civil suit. The victims' children sued the police, the Crown. They received settlements, $50,000 each in 2014.
But critically, that settlement came without any admission of liability from the police or Crown. Still, institutionally unwilling to fully own the failure.
So when you put it all together, Pickton's story is just this devastating ledger of systemic failure. Prejudice, indifference, allowing a predator to thrive by exploiting vulnerability.
The focus has to remain on the women. Their lives mattered. The failure wasn't just Pickton. It was the societal structures that deemed them less dead in the first place.
The police apologized for catching the monster too late. But the real question moving forward is structural, isn't it?
Absolutely. What changes are still needed in policing, in the courts, in resource allocation, in societal attitudes to make sure no group is ever treated as disposable again? Indigenous women, sex workers, the poor, the addicted.
And what responsibility do we as average citizens hold for the conditions, the prejudices, the indifference that allowed this horror to unfold, practically hidden in plain sight near a major city?
It's a question that demands ongoing vigilance, constant critical examination of ourselves and our systems.
Okay, so we hope you like our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.